Life is full of moments where we have the power to either lift someone up or tear them down, and it is in these moments that character is truly revealed. Imagine a world where every criticism, complaint, or condemnation was replaced by understanding, encouragement, and empathy. Imagine the relationships, the careers, the families, the communities that could flourish. Dale Carnegie, in his timeless work, highlights a truth that is as powerful today as it was when he first wrote it. Criticism is easy, cheap, and destructive, while the ability to inspire, encourage, and uplift is rare, invaluable, and transformative. Most people instinctively criticize when frustrated, when things go wrong, or when others do not meet their expectations. It feels natural because our brains are wired to notice errors, and our egos crave the satisfaction of feeling right. But this very instinct, which brings immediate gratification, often destroys influence, harms relationships, and diminishes both the critic and the criticized. Every human being carries a story inside, a narrative that justifies their choices, actions, and beliefs. When we criticize, we are not merely pointing out a mistake, we are striking at this story, at a person's pride, their intelligence, and their sense of self-worth. The result is almost always defensiveness, resentment, and resistance. Even the most rational person will protect their self-image when threatened. Consider the example Carnegie gives of Al Capone, one of the most notorious criminals in history. Society saw him as a ruthless gangster, but Capone saw himself as a misunderstood businessman, providing services that people demanded. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, he rationalized his actions as justified. This teaches us a critical lesson. Even people who are obviously in the wrong rarely see themselves that way. Attack them with criticism, and you are attacking their self-perception, which almost always provokes resistance rather than change. Reflect on your own experiences. The last time someone harshly criticized you, did it motivate you to improve, or did it make you defensive, angry, or withdrawn? Chances are it was the latter. Criticism activates the threat response in the human brain, producing cortisol and adrenaline, narrowing focus, and reducing openness to learning. Encouragement, by contrast, activates the reward system, releasing dopamine and oxytocin, which foster trust, creativity, and growth. This is why Carnegie insists that any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, but it takes true character to guide, inspire, and encourage without humiliating. History is full of leaders who master this principle. Abraham Lincoln, facing the enormous pressures of the Civil War, dealt with generals who repeatedly failed him. He rarely criticized them publicly, knowing that condemnation would demoralize them and weaken the Union's cause. Instead, he encouraged, advised, and preserved their self-respect. Theodore Roosevelt, too, inspired unwavering loyalty by recognizing effort, praising achievements, and guiding without humiliation. These leaders understood a timeless truth. True influence is not gained through fear or blame, but through respect and encouragement. In modern life, the principle is equally relevant. In workplaces, managers who constantly criticize employees may achieve compliance, but destroy motivation, innovation, and loyalty. Employees who live under fear of rebuke will do only what is necessary, and the brightest talent will often leave. In contrast, managers who coach, recognize effort, and provide constructive feedback create teams that innovate, take risks, and exceed expectations. In classrooms, teachers who ridicule students stifle curiosity, creativity, and the love of learning, whereas teachers who nurture and encourage spark lifelong passion for knowledge. Parents who constantly complain or scold their children risk creating insecurity, anxiety, or rebellion. Children who are guided with patience, recognized for their efforts, and corrected with empathy grow into confident, responsible adults. In relationships, criticism corrodes trust and affection, slowly eroding bonds that once felt strong. The difference between a household filled with judgment and one filled with encouragement is profound. In one, tension and resentment thrive. In the other, love and cooperation flourish. Even in the digital age, Carnegie's wisdom holds true. Social media has amplified criticism, judgment, and condemnation to unprecedented levels. Millions of voices compete to point out mistakes, to ridicule, and to blame. Yet the voices that build communities, inspire movements, and influence others are rarely the loudest critics. They are the encouragers, the uplifters, the problem solvers who acknowledge effort, guide with patience, and inspire action. Criticism may provide momentary satisfaction, but encouragement produces lasting influence. The practical application of this principle is deceptively simple, but requires conscious effort. Instead of saying, "You always mess this up," ask, "What can we do differently next time?" Instead of asking, "Why did you fail?" ask, "How can we improve together?" These subtle shifts in language transform conflict into collaboration. Carnegie emphasizes that the goal is not to ignore mistakes, but to address them in a way that preserves dignity, inspires change, and strengthens relationships. When we act with empathy and patience, we shift the focus from blame to growth. Consider the metaphor Carnegie uses. No beekeeper collects honey by kicking over the hive, for bees respond to violence with stings. But handled gently, they yield sweetness. People too respond not to condemnation, but to guidance, encouragement, and respect. Influence, loyalty, and cooperation are earned through care, not through criticism. Carnegie also challenges us with a practical experiment. For 1 week, completely avoid all criticism. Every time the urge arises, pause and reframe it with curiosity, patience, or encouragement. Replace "you did this wrong" with "I see your effort and here's how we can make it better." Replace "why did you fail" with "how can we try differently next time?" These subtle shifts in language transform conflict into collaboration. Carnegie emphasizes that the goal is not to ignore mistakes, but to address them in a way that preserves dignity, inspires change, and strengthens relationships. When we act with empathy and patience, we shift the focus from blame to growth. Consider the metaphor Carnegie uses. No beekeeper collects honey by kicking over the hive, for bees respond to violence with stings. But handled gently, they yield sweetness. People too respond not to condemnation, but to guidance, encouragement, and respect. Influence, loyalty, and cooperation are earned through care, not through criticism. Carnegie also challenges us with a practical experiment. For 1 week, completely avoid all criticism. Every time the urge arises, pause and reframe it with curiosity, patience, or encouragement. Replace "you did this wrong" with "I see your effort and here's how we can make it better." Replace "why did you fail" with "how can we try differently next time?" Over a week, this exercise reshapes interactions. Conversations become smoother, resistance diminishes, trust grows, and people begin to change willingly rather than resentfully. The benefits extend beyond immediate relationships. They transform the culture of a family, a team, a classroom, or an organization. This principle is not just about influence, it is about living a life of integrity, empathy, and wisdom. Criticism diminishes both the giver and the receiver. Encouragement elevates both. Leaders, parents, friends, and partners who embrace this principle create environments where people flourish. They inspire loyalty, creativity, and trust. They cultivate harmony, not conflict. They build connections that endure. As Carnegie says, do not criticize, do not condemn, do not complain. Seek instead to understand, appreciate, and uplift. In doing so, you unlock the greatest secret of human relationships, creating influence, connection, and progress that lasts a lifetime. Finally, consider these reflections. How often do you criticize in a day? In a week? Are your words lifting people up or tearing them down? Every interaction is an opportunity to practice patience, understanding, and encouragement. Begin now. Transform criticism into curiosity, judgment into guidance, and resentment into inspiration. Your words, your actions, and your attitude are not only shaping others, they are shaping you. Master this principle and you master the art of winning hearts, building influence, and creating lasting, meaningful connections. In a world filled with negativity, be the person who uplifts, encourages, and inspires. This is the path to true leadership, true friendship, and a life of purpose.